Hi there. You're watching Reddit Confessions, and this one's going to hurt. Not because of what she did at the end, but because of how I let it happen from the very beginning. The kettle was screaming. Loud, high-pitched, relentless. But she didn't flinch. She stood by the kitchen counter, scrolling on her phone, completely unbothered. I watched her through the reflection on the microwave door. That was the exact moment I knew she was gone, long before the divorce papers touched the table. It wasn't her silence that hit me. It was how comfortable she was in it. She finally turned around, placed an envelope next to my breakfast, and said, without looking me in the eye, "Don't drag this out, okay?" She called it this, like we weren't 12 years of love, fights, makeups, holidays, mortgage payments, inside jokes, and burnt lasagna. I didn't say a word. I opened the envelope like a scared little intern opening his first write-up. Divorce papers. Signed. Dated. Filed. Like she had this prepared weeks ago. Probably did. I didn't cry. Not then. I just nodded, walked to the drawer, and grabbed a pen like a trained pet. I heard her sigh in relief, as if I'd passed her little test by not falling apart. The second I finished signing, she grabbed her keys, slung her gym bag over her shoulder, and mumbled, "I'll have movers pick up the rest." No goodbye. Not even a fake one. And if you're wondering if I begged, no. I wanted to. God, I wanted to grab her hand and say, "Please don't do this." But I didn't. Because somehow I knew, I wasn't just losing a wife. I was losing the version of myself that thought I was worth staying for. She left me standing there in the quiet kitchen, next to a cold mug of coffee, holding the last legal remnants of our marriage. Later that night, I found her playlist still connected to the Bluetooth speaker. She was playing happy music in the car while driving away from our life. Who even does that? I didn't sleep for 3 nights. I reread the documents like they'd change if I stared hard enough. Maybe there was a mistake. Maybe she'd realize something, call me, say it was all impulsive. But then Kevin, my coworker, sent me a photo. Mallory. At a rooftop bar. Holding hands with a guy in tight jeans and a blazer. They looked happy. I didn't recognize her smile. I hadn't seen that smile in years. Turns out, someone else had. That was the moment I knew. She didn't leave because she needed space. She left because she already had a replacement. And I was nothing more than a silent, obedient stepping stone. But here's the part she didn't expect. A week later. She came back. Not to gloat. Not to apologize. She came back crying. Standing outside the gate of my new house. And if you think you know why, trust me, you don't. I didn't open the door. I just stood there behind the curtain, watching Mallory like she was some stranger who'd taken her face and was now glitching outside my fence. She had one of those soft pink sweaters on, the kind she used to wear around the house when she was pretending to still love me. Her mascara was running. I don't even think she realized she was crying until she wiped her cheek and looked at her hand like she was surprised something still hurt. She was gripping an envelope. Ironic. For a second, I imagined opening the door, inviting her in, sitting her down, offering tea like a polite idiot, but that Darrell doesn't live here anymore. Let's rewind a bit. Because to understand why she showed up, you have to know what happened in that missing week. After I left our old house, I didn't go far. I just needed a place with no memories. Somewhere that didn't smell like her shampoo or echo with silence every time I passed the hallway where we used to argue about dumb things like grocery lists or thermostats. I used the savings I'd quietly built up over the years, money she never asked about because, let's be honest, she never cared how I handled bills. I found this place through a friend of a friend. It was a wreck. Mold in the bathroom. Paint peeling like sunburned skin. A backyard with weeds that had their own ecosystem. But it had 4 walls, a roof, and a door that was mine to close. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I worked non-stop. Not just on the house, but on myself. I painted, ripped out the old carpet, fixed the porch light. I filled the silence with audiobooks and power tools. Anything to drown out the voice in my head that kept asking, "What did you do wrong, Darrell? Why weren't you enough?" But I also started piecing together the truth. Kevin sent me another picture 2 days after the first. Mallory. Same guy. This time at a furniture showroom. You don't shop for couches with someone you just met. So I did what every spineless man with a broken heart does, I went full digital detective. I checked her Venmo history, we never unfriended each other. Payment to a place called Lux Stay. A boutique hotel downtown. The timestamps? They went back 3 months. She'd been planning this breakup like a product launch. Then I made the mistake of checking our shared cloud storage. I don't even know why I clicked on the photo backups. Maybe I was looking for one last reminder of when we were happy. Instead, I found a video. She hadn't deleted it. Maybe she forgot. Maybe she didn't care. It was her. In the passenger seat of someone's car. Laughing, tipsy, leaning over and kissing him on the cheek. Her voice was light and bubbly, not the flat tone she used with me for the last year. At the end of the clip, she said, "God, I'm so glad I'm getting out of that marriage." That was when something in me broke for good. You know that feeling when grief turns into clarity? It's like waking up after crying for hours and suddenly realizing the world doesn't care. You can either sit there rotting in what they left behind, or start building something they never expected you to have. So I did the thing I never thought I'd do. I posted a picture of myself online. Not for revenge. Not for attention. Just, to exist again. New haircut. Clean shirt. Fresh paint stains on my hands. Caption, "Starting over feels better than begging." It got 2 likes. Both from accounts I didn't recognize. But the next morning, Mallory viewed it. And that night, she showed up at my gate. Crying. Shaking. Holding her own envelope. I still hadn't opened the door. Not yet. I finally opened the door. Not because I wanted to let her in. Not because some part of me still ached for her. But because I wanted to see her up close. Not the woman from the photos. Not the woman who vanished from our marriage like smoke. I wanted to see her as she was now, confused, undone, no longer in control. Mallory looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her perfect eyeliner was smeared. Her sweater had a tear in the sleeve. She clutched that envelope like it was the only thing holding her together. And for a few seconds, she didn't say a word. Her mouth opened, then closed again. Her eyes scanned my porch, the tools, the new door I installed last night, the light fixture still hanging half-attached. "I didn't know where else to go," she finally muttered. I should have laughed. I should have told her to leave. But instead, I crossed my arms and stared at her like she was a broken equation I couldn't solve. The air between us was thick, like all those unspoken conversations we never had were now screaming to be heard. She handed me the envelope like it weighed 100 pounds. "Just read it," she whispered. I didn't read it. Not yet. I stepped aside without saying a word. She walked in, cautiously, as if my new place would bite her. She paused in the doorway, probably expecting a familiar scent or a memory to slap her in the face. But this house had nothing of our past. No wedding photos. No anniversary cards. No shared blanket on the couch. Just raw walls, mismatched furniture, and the scent of sawdust and lemon cleaner. She sat down on the only armchair I had, hands folded in her lap like a guilty child. "I made a mistake," she said, and my stomach turned. She didn't even blink before adding, he wasn't what I thought he was. I leaned against the wall, arms still crossed. That who you left me for? The guy from the rooftop bar? Her eyes widened, just a little. She didn't expect me to know. Yeah, she admitted, voice cracking. Dean. We'd been talking for a while, he made me feel alive again. I nearly laughed. Alive. As if being with me was like living in a coma. I didn't say anything though. I let the silence speak for me. He was exciting. Confident. Spontaneous, she continued, clearly rehearsing some sad confession monologue. But the minute the divorce was finalized, everything changed. She started picking at the hem of her sleeve, voice shrinking. He stopped answering calls. Stopped texting. I found out I was just, the thrill of the chase. I still didn't move. Not even when her voice cracked again. I thought leaving you would free me. But it just made me realize how safe I felt with you. How real things were. Oh, now I was safe. Real? She used to say I was boring. Too cautious. Too routine. She hated how I never planned surprises, how I made grocery lists with categories, how I ironed my shirts even when I worked from home. I thought she liked stability. Turns out, she wanted fireworks, even if it meant setting the house on fire. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said after a long pause. But I needed to tell you that you didn't do anything wrong. I finally looked down at the envelope in my hand and opened it. Inside wasn't paperwork. It was a photo, one of us. From years ago. Before the distance. Before the cold bed and fake smiles. We were at a fall festival, bundled up, laughing. She'd written something on the back. You were always enough. I just didn't know what enough looked like until it was gone. For a second, it stung. Not because I missed her, but because she had the nerve to say that now. I'm not coming back, I said firmly. Not now. Not ever. You don't get to make me your fallback plan. She blinked hard, and tears started falling again, heavier this time. But I still love you, she whispered. Then you shouldn't have made me sign that envelope. I opened the front door again. She just sat there, stunned, her hands trembling in her lap. You asked me not to drag it out, remember? So I won't. Please leave. It took her a moment, but she stood, legs shaky, lips trembling like a child lost at the mall. She walked to the door, turned back once as if hoping I'd stop her. But I didn't move. The door closed behind her with the softest click. And for the first time since she left, I felt peace. But little did I know, that wasn't the last time she'd show up. No, the worst part hadn't even happened yet. The silence after she left wasn't the kind that soothes you. It was the kind that sits heavy in your chest, like a weight you didn't know you were still carrying. I stood there in the middle of the room, staring at the now closed door, and for a second, I wondered if I imagined the whole thing. Maybe she was just a ghost of regret passing through. Maybe she never really existed in the first place, not the real Mallory, not the one I thought I loved. I walked back to the chair and sat down slowly. The photo she left me was still on the table. I turned it over in my hand again and again, reading those words on the back like they were some cryptic riddle. You were always enough. I just didn't know what enough looked like until it was gone. What the hell was that supposed to mean? Did she expect it to land like some grand apology? As if those words could rewind the nights I spent crying alone, the months I lived as a ghost in my own home, the betrayal I still couldn't put a name to without choking. The next day, I tried to distract myself. I went out to buy supplies to finish the bathroom renovation, tiles, grout, a cheap mirror. The lady at the store smiled at me too long and asked if I needed help finding anything. I said no and moved on. I wasn't ready to be seen. Not by anyone new. Not yet. That night, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. I shouldn't have shown up like that. I panicked. I just needed to see you. Mallory. Of course. I stared at the message until my phone screen dimmed. I didn't reply. The next day, another message. Please don't shut me out completely. Can we at least talk one more time? No pressure. Just, closure. Closure. Amazing how the people who burn your world down always want a front row seat when the ashes cool. But then something strange happened. 2 days later, I got a knock on the door. It was early, like, still dark outside early. I opened the door cautiously, expecting maybe another sad visit from Mallory or a delivery mix-up. Instead, a man stood there. Tall. Confident. Early 30s. Button-up shirt with the sleeves rolled, like he walked out of a catalog and into my personal tragedy. Are you Darrell? He asked, his voice calm, almost too calm. Yeah. He nodded and looked down at the ground for a second. I'm Dean. I didn't answer right away. My brain froze. Dean. The Dean. The guy from the rooftop bar. The guy Mallory left me for. I think we need to talk, he said. And here's the thing, if I were a stronger man, maybe I would have slammed the door. Maybe I would have punched him. But I was so caught off guard, so utterly stunned by the surreal twist of fate standing on my porch, that I just stepped aside and let him in. He didn't sit. He paced. Nervous energy, hands fidgeting with the buttons on his sleeve. I know I'm probably the last person you want to see. But you deserve to hear this. I crossed my arms, leaning back against the wall, saying nothing. He exhaled, hard. I ended things with her. Officially. Why? I asked, trying to sound casual, but the bitterness slipped through like a crack in a dam. He looked at me, genuinely, like he was the one in pain. Because she lied to both of us. That made me pause. She told me you were controlling. Boring. Emotionally distant. That you checked out years ago. She painted this picture of a loveless marriage where she was trapped, he said. But it wasn't true. Not even close. I clenched my jaw. She said she hadn't been with you in months. That you barely spoke. But then I found out she was still living with you, still sleeping in the same bed, and still pretending. I laughed, short, bitter, broken. Welcome to the club. He shook his head. I was a fool. I should have known. I was just the exit strategy. She used me to make her escape look justified. He pulled something from his pocket, his own envelope. Letters. Messages. Screenshots. Receipts. She asked me for money, he said. Said she needed help with rent. With groceries. She made it sound like she was starting fresh, struggling. I raised an eyebrow. She drained our joint savings before she walked out. She wasn't struggling. Dean let out a long breath, like he'd been holding it for days. I thought you deserved to know. She wasn't just dishonest with you, she played us both. And I'm sorry. I really am. For the first time in this whole nightmare, I felt something I hadn't expected, validation. Not from Mallory. But from the man she replaced me with. Dean stayed for maybe 10 more minutes. Then he left quietly, with no handshake, no fake promises to stay in touch. Just two broken men walking away from the same mistake. That night, I opened Mallory's final text. I stared at it for a while before finally typing 2 words. We're done. I turned off my phone, walked outside, and looked up at the stars. It didn't make things okay. But it felt like the first honest breath I'd taken in years. 3 days passed after Dean's visit, and I didn't hear from Mallory. Not a text. Not a call. Not a tearful message begging to be forgiven. Just silence. And it was strange how peaceful that silence felt now. Like I was finally the main character in my own life again, and not just a footnote in someone else's midlife drama. I kept working on the house, slowly turning that battered structure into something resembling a home. I painted the walls a soft slate blue. Replaced the warped floorboards. Installed a new mailbox. Small victories, but each one felt like I was building something Mallory couldn't destroy. Then, something unexpected happened. It started with a voicemail, from Mallory's sister, Emily. We hadn't spoken since the divorce. Emily and I were never close, but she always liked me more than she liked her own brother-in-law, which says a lot. Her voice on the recording was rushed, urgent. Darrell, hey, I know this is weird, and maybe it's not my place, but I think you need to know. Mallory isn't okay. She's been spiraling. She said something about you moving on and how she made a mistake, but it's worse than that. Just, can you call me? Please. I listened to the message twice. And for a second, just a second, I felt that familiar tug of guilt. The same tug that used to keep me quiet when Mallory would belittle me in front of friends, or brush off my affection like it was inconvenient. That old voice in my head that whispered, you should take care of her. You're the steady one. The fixer. But I silenced that voice. Still, I called Emily back, not for Mallory, but for myself. Because I needed to hear it. I needed to know what kind of person I had given 12 years of my life to. Emily picked up on the first ring. Thank God, she breathed. Look, I'm not asking you to get involved again. I swear. But Mallory's been saying, disturbing things. She's angry, confused, lashing out at people. I don't know what's going on with her, but I think she believed you'd come back. That you'd still be, waiting. I almost laughed. Waiting? After everything? After she dismantled our life with one smug signature. She said you bought a house, Emily continued. A new place. She didn't take that well. I think she thought you'd be stuck in the past, broken. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I looked around at the walls I'd painted myself, the shelves I'd built, the furniture I'd assembled with trembling hands and silent curses. Broken? Sure. But I wasn't stuck. Not anymore. Then Emily said something that chilled me. She's been driving past your house. My breath hitched. What? Yeah. She hasn't said it outright, but she's hinted. She knows what your porch looks like. What color your curtains are. She mentioned the new lights you hung outside. A cold sweat prickled my neck. I thought you should know. Just in case. I thanked her, hung up, and checked my porch camera footage. I hadn't looked at the past few days, didn't think I needed to. But there she was. Around 11:40 p.m. 2 nights ago. Just standing across the street. Not approaching. Not knocking. Just, watching. Like a stranger pressing her nose against a window of a life that used to be hers. That night, I barely slept. I didn't feel fear exactly. More like, unease. Because now I realized the story wasn't finished. Not even close. The next morning, I stepped outside to grab the mail, and there it was, a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Just my name on the front in her handwriting. I stood on the porch and read it under the morning light. Darrell. I've made the worst mistake of my life. I thought I wanted freedom. I thought I was chasing something better. But all I found was a version of myself I don't even recognize. I can't sleep. I can't eat. Everything feels hollow. I thought you'd always be there. I thought you'd wait. But you didn't, and that's what hurts most. I'm not asking you to fix this. I just want one more chance to explain. Please. Just, one more conversation. Mallory. I stood there holding that letter for a long time. And something inside me snapped, but not in anger. In clarity. This wasn't guilt anymore. This wasn't grief. This was the last test. And I already knew how I would pass it. Because a storm was coming, and this time, I was ready for it. I didn't respond to her letter. Not immediately. Not after all the letters I'd mentally written to her over the years that she never gave me the chance to say out loud. I didn't respond because I already knew what this was, an attempt to rewrite the ending. But here's what people like Mallory never understand: when you shatter something that deeply, the pieces never go back together the way they were. They cut differently. They leave new scars. Still, I couldn't pretend it hadn't gotten under my skin. I sat in the kitchen that night, the letter still in front of me, untouched cup of coffee going cold. I told myself I didn't care. I repeated it like a mantra. I don't care. I don't care. But of course I did. Not because I missed her. But because there's a specific kind of madness that comes from watching someone who wrecked you suddenly beg for the wreckage back. I didn't want revenge. I wanted understanding. Not from her, but from myself. I wanted to know why I was still giving her space in my head after everything. And then, something stupid happened. Something so perfectly Mallory it almost made me laugh out loud. She showed up again. Middle of the afternoon. I had my headphones in, music blasting while I cleaned paint off the baseboards, and I didn't hear the knock. It wasn't until I turned around that I saw her through the front window, just standing there with a box in her hands like a broken Amazon delivery. I should have ignored her. I really should have. But I didn't. I walked to the door, opened it halfway, and leaned on the frame. "Darrell," she said softly, as if saying my name gently would erase the past 12 months of deceit. I didn't answer. I just looked down at the box. She caught the cue. "They're your things. From the apartment." I didn't know what to do with them. Apartment. Right. The one she moved into with Dean after leaving me. The one she apparently decorated with all new furniture while pretending I never existed. I took the box and was about to close the door, but she held out her hand. "Wait. Please. Just give me 5 minutes. You don't even have to talk." I didn't know why, but I stepped back and let her in again. Maybe I needed to watch her lie to my face one last time just to close the chapter properly. She walked in slowly, almost cautiously, and scanned the house. She looked at the walls I painted. The new shelves. The couch I built from scratch. She even noticed the record player in the corner. "You were always good with your hands," she said, smiling sadly. "I missed this. The way you make a place feel like home." I said nothing. She sat on the edge of the couch like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to fully rest. And then, without any build-up, she started talking. "I panicked, Darrell. When I left. I thought I was choosing freedom, but I was just reacting to fear. I felt stuck, invisible. You were always steady, always the calm in the storm, and for some reason, that started to feel suffocating. But now I see that it wasn't you. It was me." I leaned against the doorway, arms folded. I kept waiting for the lie. The deflection. The self-preserving spin. But to my surprise, it didn't come. I thought Dean was different. He was exciting, impulsive. But he wasn't stable. He wasn't you. And when things got hard, he didn't stay. He ghosted. Left me with rent, bills, and no backup plan. There it was. The truth. I thought if I came here and apologized, maybe you'd still. I don't know. Maybe you'd see me. The way you used to. I walked over to the box and opened it. Inside were old books I used to read at night, my vintage watch I thought I'd lost, and a faded photo strip from a county fair years ago. The one where she kissed my cheek and made me blush like a teenager. I see you now, I said. But not the way you want. Her face fell. I see the woman who used my stability as a stepping stone. Who mistook loyalty for weakness. Who wanted to be rescued from a life she built herself. Mallory's eyes welled up, but I wasn't moved anymore. You handed me divorce papers like you were giving me a gym brochure. You didn't cry. You didn't hesitate. You walked away without looking back. So now, don't ask me to pretend any of this still belongs to us. She stood slowly, wiping her cheek, lips trembling. I just needed to try. One last time. I nodded. And now you did. She walked to the door, paused one last time with her hand on the knob, and whispered, "You were never boring. You were just good. And I didn't know how to be good with you." Then she was gone. And I knew, that was the last time I'd ever let her back in. But life has a cruel sense of humor. Because what arrived 2 days later would drag me right back into the storm I thought I'd escaped. And this time, it wasn't Mallory. The letter arrived on a rainy Thursday, no return address, no markings, just my name in blocky, unfamiliar handwriting across a pale yellow envelope. I wasn't expecting anything, so for a second I thought maybe it was some leftover legal document from the divorce process, or worse, something Mallory had cooked up as a final grasp for sympathy. But when I opened it and unfolded the single sheet inside, the world around me stopped moving. The letter wasn't from Mallory. It was from Dean's wife. I sat down slowly, heart pounding in my throat, and started reading. Her name was Vanessa. The tone of the letter was calm, methodical, but there was a tension behind every word, like someone writing with a hand that had trembled for far too long. She introduced herself briefly, said she found my name through old emails she discovered on Dean's laptop, and then dropped a bomb so casually, it made my head spin. I don't know if you're aware, Darrell, but Mallory wasn't the first. Dean has a pattern. He targets married women who are unhappy or uncertain, draws them in, and convinces them to implode their lives. Then he moves on. Fast. I've seen it happen before. I warned him this time would blow up worse than the others. I was right. I couldn't breathe. She continued. I only decided to write because I think you deserve the truth, not just about what they did, but about how deep it went. Mallory reached out to Dean again. After you confronted her. After she left your house. She told him she still loved him. That she regretted leaving so soon. That if he would just say the word, she'd drop everything and try again. I stared at the page, reading that paragraph over and over like I'd misinterpreted it. Mallory, the same woman who showed up at my house crying, apologizing, swearing she'd changed, had gone straight back to him the moment she realized I wasn't coming back. She tried to crawl back to the man who ghosted her. The man who ruined her life. And when he didn't want her, that's when she showed up on my porch. It was never about me. Not really. I was just the backup plan. Vanessa had enclosed screenshots, photos of text threads Mallory had sent Dean after our last conversation. The messages were pathetic. Desperate. She talked about how Darrell is different now. Cold. Like he doesn't feel anything anymore, and then begged Dean to just meet for coffee, because she needed closure. Closure. That word again. But what twisted the knife deeper was this. I think I ruined everything. Dean, you're the only one who ever made me feel alive. I thought I could go back to Darrell, but it's not the same. I can't force myself to love what I left behind. That's what she called me. What I left behind. Like I was some dusty old suitcase she'd forgotten at the airport. I dropped the letter on the floor, stood up, and paced the room, my fingers digging into my scalp as the pieces all locked into place. The way she'd looked at the shelves I built, the way she sniffed the air like she missed the scent of wood and paint, none of it was real. It was a performance. A desperate Hail Mary after getting rejected twice in the same year by two different men. This wasn't regret. It was survival. She wasn't looking for reconciliation. She was looking for shelter. A warm place to land. A man to carry the emotional weight of her consequences. I didn't sleep that night. I barely moved. I just sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the door like I was waiting for her to knock again. And the sickest part? She did. The next evening, just as the sun dipped below the rooftops and bathed everything in that soft gold light that makes even broken things look beautiful, I heard her car pull up. My stomach twisted before the knock even came. I waited. Didn't move. Let her knock twice before I finally opened the door. She smiled. That old manipulative smile that used to work on me before I learned how lies were perfume and lip gloss. "I brought dinner," she said sweetly, holding up a paper bag like it was some kind of peace treaty. "Thought maybe we could just talk." I nodded slowly, gestured for her to come in, and she stepped inside like nothing had ever happened. Like we were still married. Like none of the months of betrayal ever existed. She sat down, opened the bag, started unloading food onto the table like a happy housewife. I watched her the whole time. Calm. Detached. Like a scientist studying an insect through glass. Then, once everything was laid out, I walked to the drawer, pulled out the envelope Vanessa had sent me, and placed it right between her and the food. Her eyes dropped to the paper. The color drained from her face. "What's this?" she whispered. "You tell me," I said. She reached for the envelope, hesitated, then slowly pulled out the letter and the screenshots. Her hand started to tremble before she even read the first full line. She flipped through them, faster and faster, her lips parting like she wanted to speak but couldn't form a single syllable. Then her eyes finally met mine. Wide. Terrified. Exposed. I didn't mean. "Don't," I interrupted. "Don't lie again. You had a choice. And you made it. Twice." Tears started falling fast now. Real ones. But they didn't move me this time. They just irritated me, like someone crying at the end of a movie because they didn't like the ending they wrote. "You came here with food, thinking a warm meal and sad eyes would fix everything. But it won't. Because now I see you clearly. And honestly, I pity you." Her shoulders collapsed. "Please, Darrell. Please, don't shut the door on me." I took a deep breath. Calm. Cold. Focused. "You handed me divorce papers with a smirk, remember? You shut the door a long time ago. I'm just making sure it stays closed." And then I walked past her, opened the front door, and pointed to the exit. She stood there for a moment, paralyzed. Then, finally, she walked out into the fading light, shaking, broken, and this time, I didn't look back. But there was still one final piece of the story she didn't know. And when she found out, everything would change again. 3 weeks passed. No calls. No knocks. No more envelopes on my porch. The silence this time wasn't heavy, it was earned. It was peaceful. And for the first time in what felt like years, I started to wake up without that sick weight pressing against my chest. The kind of pressure that comes from trying to fix something that was never yours to fix in the first place. Mallory was gone. This time, for good. The last time I saw her was through the side mirror of my truck as I pulled out of the driveway to go hiking one Sunday morning. She was sitting in her car down the block. She didn't wave. Didn't follow. Just sat there, staring, like a ghost watching a life that moved on without her. And it had. My life had changed, radically. I'd enrolled in a woodworking course at a local community center, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for when my marriage was all about walking on emotional eggshells. I met new people. Made friends who didn't know me as Mallory's husband, but simply as Darrell. I started going to weekend markets, small-town festivals. I rediscovered how to be comfortable in my own company. Then came Lauren. I met her at the community center. She taught a pottery class across the hall from mine. At first, we just exchanged awkward nods in the hallway. Then shared coffee during breaks. Then stories. Then laughter. Nothing about her was dramatic. Nothing felt forced. There was no act. She didn't need rescuing. And I didn't need to prove I was worth keeping. One day, while we were walking through a quiet park outside town, I told her everything. Not because I wanted sympathy, but because I realized I trusted her with the full truth. She didn't judge. She just listened. When I finished, she smiled softly and said, "Sounds like you've already done the hard part, letting go of the wrong person." And just like that, it all made sense. Letting go wasn't about anger or revenge. It was about giving yourself permission to stop bleeding for someone who never learned how to heal. The next morning, I took that photo Mallory had left me, the one from the fall fair, and dropped it in a donation box at a thrift store on the edge of town. Someone else could make up their own story about the couple in the picture. Mine was over. And I was okay with that. So if you're still with me, still listening to this entire confession, I want to leave you with this. You can love someone with your whole heart and still have to walk away. You can be the calm in their storm and still be the one they leave behind. And that doesn't make you weak. It means you were brave enough to love honestly, even if they weren't capable of returning it. And maybe one day, when you least expect it, peace shows up in the form of a stranger with clay on her hands and a kind smile. That's what healing looks like. Not revenge. Not bitterness. Just peace. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've ever experienced something similar, or if there was a moment in my journey that hit you hard, drop a comment and share your story below. I want to hear it. We all do. You're watching Reddit Confessions, where real stories like this come to life. If this one moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Stay strong. Stay honest. And never settle for someone who treats your heart like a temporary home. Until next time.